The news media has failed miserably in presenting a balanced and fair picture of what's going on in our confusing world.
Welcome back to The Unknowns. Today, I actually know the guy, and I have to be fully transparent. It's my father-in-law. So I'm not going to call him Pawpaw today, but I am going to call him by his journalistic name, Frank Beaman. Frank has been renowned and award-winning journalist for years, and also was at the convention in 1968 in Chicago.
My assignment editor said, well, go out in Lincoln Park and talk to the crazies. And that means the protesters who were out in Lincoln Park and elsewhere, they'd been in town for a couple of weeks. They set up an office or two, and I got to know the people who became the Chicago 7 and Chicago 8 very well.
Which ones?
I bumped into Hoffman in Old Town quite by accident, and I had my tape recorder, and I sat down with him on a curb. So you have a picture of this wild young man and this a guy in the suit and tie sitting on a curb, hot day in August, and he is explaining the Yippie Manifesto to me, which was, of course, their masterpiece. And I listened to the thing, and I could tell that he was making some really good points about the war in Vietnam, the need for peace, the need for a different society, the need to tear down the establishment. The tape that I had was so laced with profanity, with four-letter words, that when I got back, we couldn't use it.
Was there a moment in time, a spark that happened that you remember when the conflagration occurred?
Well, for me, it started on Sunday night. I'd pulled an air shift, and I was on my way home north of Chicago. And as I drove up Lakeshore Drive and past Lincoln Park, I saw bright lights and fog against the lights. And I could smell it. It was tear gas, clearly. So I just pulled over into the grass and ran toward it with a tape recorder. And so I covered the Sunday night incursion. And that was violent.
When you pulled over the car, did you know, I'm not getting home anytime soon?
Oh, right? Yeah. I was certain of that. Had to be, and I also knew that all my fears and all my foreboding about the week was coming to pass. I would go home and tell my wife, "There's going to be blood," because you've got two sides, and neither one is going to back up a bit. So it's going to be a confrontation. And with all those soldiers and policemen in town, it had to be violent. So I knew it was going to happen. But of course, I couldn't say that because in those days, you didn't talk about what might happen. I mean, this was the code of Cronkite. You only report what had happened, what had actually happened. You didn't say what you thought might happen or what you wished, heaven forfend, what you wished would happen. Journalists were not allowed to do that. We were we had to just swallow the idea that there was going to be terrible trouble and just hit the street, hit the hall, and report what we saw.
Does news today reflect that ethos?
No, no, not at all. It's the other way around. News is basically entertainment now, I think. And of course, it tells you what it is. And news, by its nature, is what has gone wrong, not what has gone right. But today we're dealing in an entirely different way, and it's all conjecture and prediction and things that weren't basically allowed during the time of the 60s.
Give me that sense of code of conduct that a journalist back in the 60s and 70s sort of abided by.
There was a sign in the fabled City News Bureau of Chicago that said, if you see an adjective, kill it. Meaning, don't use words like erupted, thundered, terrible. Don't use the adjectives. Just say what happened.
Any other moments when you were at the convention or anywhere else that are sort of seared?
Walking on the floor and talking with the Chicago delegation, with the Illinois delegation, I remember when Daley shouted back to Abraham Ribicoff. Ribicoff was the chair, and he had the microphone, and he said something about this is like a Gestapo operation. And Daley used a bunch of epithets that I won't repeat here in telling him that he had no right to say that in the city of Chicago.
As you look at the convention today in 2024 and the convention in 1968 that you experienced, are there similarities?
We got Nixon and law and order after the convention because the voting public lost their trust in the Democratic Party because they had seen the chaos in Chicago. So Nixon's argument for law and order was much more appealing to them.
And I assume that's why the Democrats and the city of Chicago and the mayor of Chicago are ensuring that there is no repeat of 68, because that's certainly an issue that could be used against the Democrats and Kamala Harris.
Absolutely. The other thing that I find absolutely fascinating, and I've thought about this so much, out of the convention came the first really notable example of split reality. There was violence in the streets, but the people in the convention hall were all for Daley and what they were talking about. They were all for the establishment view. So it was the first time, I think, that a lot of people said, I don't choose to believe what my eyes saw. And today, again, that's common, certainly common.
So as we move forward as a nation, what do you think we need to do to bring people together? Because it just seems like the tension and the level of discussion, and to your point, the duality of like, I see this reality, you see this reality. There's only one reality, right? Yeah. It's the facts. How do we move forward as a nation?
The news media has failed miserably in presenting a balanced and fair picture of what's going on in our confusing world. It's hard to do, it's hard to cover and tell the truth all the time, but news is the search for truth. And they didn't have the right hound dogs, I guess, in front of them for the search, because the media has let us down in so many ways. And it's because it's turned into entertainment and the kind of things that excites people, but it doesn't inform them. And information is what we need. The nation was founded on the principle of the informed electorate. Well, the electorate has not been properly informed. And that's the job of the news media.